Another Jeepin' with Cool Guy video. What else have you got to do with your time? On tonight's episode of Jeepin' with Cool Guy, we're going to take off the intake manifold and probably the exhaust manifold on this 258 inline 6 engine. This configuration is different than the other Jeep intake and exhaust manifold that I have posted on my channel, because that was an 84. This is off of a 79. Somewhere in the early 80s, 81, 82, they went with cheaper set things on the motors because, you know, AMC was kind of getting, I guess, a little bit more strapped for cash. So for example, like the valve cover, they put a plastic valve cover on it. Okay, interesting. But anyways, so I digress. Today's episode is going to be all about taking these two things off. So the configuration is a little bit different than the other one, but it's relatively the same. But I wanted to show you the different components as we take them off, in case you actually have a inline 6 from, this is going to be from 76 to 81, maybe, give or take, somewhere around there. I don't know about the CJ5s. I know that the CJ5s from 76 to 81 had the exact same engine, but I don't know about the CJ5s previously from that. So before we take all this stuff off, let's point out a couple things. This right here is called the heater box, and both my other Jeep, the older model, or the newer model, and this one have this on here. But this one in particular actually has two pieces to it. But there is normally a silver tube, almost like a silver foil tube, that comes up out of this, and it actually goes to the bottom part of the air cleaner element, the whole housing. And that is, I think, related to the choke, and it gives the engine the ability to warm up quicker because you're taking hot air directly off of the exhaust manifold and putting it right into the air system, so that your choke opens up quicker, preferably in the colder environments. So that's your heater box, this piece right here. Now we're looking at the back part of the engine. This is the front part of the engine over here. This is the outer side of the intake manifold. On the 80s emissions version, there would be an EGR valve here, but this is just capped off. This is obviously pre-emissions control, so this engine configuration of wiring and everything is a lot simpler than the 81s through 86. This hose right here is mounted to this bracket right up on top of the intake manifold, and it goes down underneath, and then it connects to this port on the bottom part of the exhaust manifold. I have absolutely no idea what this thing does or what it was supposed to connect to. I will definitely have to get my manifold or my manual out and read through it when I put this thing all back to original specs. So have to see what this goes to. Obviously, this is the accelerator, or the accelerator cable that connects to this pivot arm that connects to the throttle. That's really it for the extraneous stuff, so that was a really quick walkthrough tutorial. All these other things will probably wind up changing because I want to go back to, I know this is crazy, but I want to go back to the original Carter double-barreled carburetor, because I want to be able to put the original air cleaner housing on top of this thing and going back to the original look and the original functionality. If you get those the Carter double-barreled carburetors rebuilt or remanufactured, they actually run really well. I mean, no, it may not be great in Fargo, North Dakota in the middle of January, but I haven't really noticed that big of a difference, and I just have no need to upgrade or do anything else that just sucks in more fuel. They suck enough fuel as it is. So anyways, let's take this thing off. The intake manifold is held on by, I think it's 6 bolts, maybe 7 bolts. The first ones we're going to take off are the connecting bolts between the the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold. There's 4 of them across the top, and they all have these thick washers, pressure washers, that hold the exhaust and the intake manifold in place. These are all 9/16 inch heads. I don't know if these things are supposed to come out this easily, but mine don't really seem to have a whole lot of torque on them. I'm assuming that these things have never been replaced or fixed, so who knows, maybe they just became loose over time. Now we've gotten to that point, we've taken off the first 2. One to show you the 2 pieces of the heater box. So here's one piece. This one's actually in really good shape. I can probably de-rust this thing, maybe ceramic coat it, Cerakote it. The other part has a little bit more rust to it. So let's take this one off. There's a bolt right underneath here that you really can only get to with a ratcheting wrench, just because of the angle around the intake manifold. Okay, there again. This is that washer that I was telling you about. It's almost like a cup. Anyways, second part of the heater box. So this is the piece that the tube connects to, but you can see how mine's kind of rusted out all the way through here, which is really kind of a shame, because I don't know of anybody that makes these things, and this seems to be a little bit more complicated. I mean, I guess you could manufacture this on your own if you really wanted to. I don't know, I might have to do that. If anybody out there has got one of these things to sell, email me. Okay, so there was 2 on the top part here. There was 1 below holding in the heater box. There's 2 down below here underneath the intake manifold, connecting it to the exhaust manifold. And then there's 2 across the top here. Okay, I miscalculated again. There's apparently 2 underneath here, and then 2 underneath over there. And I just didn't take this one out yet, so let's get in there. Bag and tag, people. Bag and tag, very important. All right, this is going to be kind of tough to show. Actually, kind of tough to get to. The connection spot, or the connection plate, if you want to call it that, bottom part of the intake manifold is bolted to the exhaust manifold by 4 bolts, nuts. 2 are on the back side, right underneath your choke, on the back inside, if you want to call it that, of the intake manifold, and the other 2 are underneath the carburetor, right up here in front. So I'm going to take those things off. These are also 9/16, at least these are 9/16 inch nuts. It just might kind of be tough to get in there. Going to have to use a flexible extender. Okay, once you remove the 2 bolts that are underneath where would be the EGR valve that actually hold on the throttle body too, you'll notice that they are double threaded bolts. So you got the thread here, then you got the thread here, and then you have a nut and a washer on one side, and they go up through here like this, and then into the actual intake manifold, or actually through the exhaust manifold into the intake manifold. I wouldn't lose these. Hopefully these will clean up all right. All right, so interestingly enough, the top bolts, the nuts come off a lot easier, where the bottom ones, the whole bolt unscrewed, and it may just be dependent on how much it's rusted out. So there's still the lock washer on there, That comes off fairly easily. So I guess I'm getting a good idea of what the other bolts look like. Now before I go any further, this bracket here with this tube, which I'm not really quite sure what it is, before I take off the intake manifold, which I'm assuming I think I got everything. Who knows, we'll see in a second. I want to take this off because if this hose is truly connected to that, then, well, there you go. And that's a good indication of how rusted out it was. There you go. Completely snapped off. So if anybody has any idea what this hose goes to, in the bottom of the exhaust manifold, and what it connects to on the carburetor, let me know. Alright, I think I've got all the bolts off of this thing, nuts and all that other fun stuff. But before we do that, you want to make sure that your carburetor is disconnected. You know, all the hoses aren't connected to anything on the other side. Like this is the distributor advance, or the distributor advance hose. Disconnect that. Document all this stuff, whatever carburetor you have on, just so that you're not confusing yourself when you put the whole thing back together. But the one that's most critical is the fuel line. A lot of people have the fuel filter right here, which I think is what you're supposed to do. But as soon as you disconnect this from your carburetor, whatever fuel is still sitting in there, in here, is going to come spilling out. So I'm going to disconnect this at the top port, the top connector. Everybody's got theirs wired or hosed differently, connected differently, just because I don't want fuel running all over the place just yet. Cool. Now I'm hoping that this is all evaporated, but we'll have to see. That'd be better safe than sorry as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to get a container to see if any of it will drain out of this real quick. Word to the wise. I have this thing on engine stand right now. And as stable as this engine stand is, it's still holding up 300 pounds worth of steel. And when you're pulling on stuff and you're moving stuff around, be careful, people, because the last thing you want to do is pull this thing over on you, because it will crush you. You're going to be in a world of hurt. So just be careful. I don't know if you need to have somebody in the garage with you, but don't do this alone, or make sure that you've always got an escape plan. Because the last thing I want somebody on this channel to do is hurt themselves because we didn't talk about the consequences of what we're doing. Alright, so there. Fuel filter is removed. No fuel. Good. Now, if you have the proper seal on this thing, this should still be stuck to the gasket pretty well. So grab a rubber mallet, kind of hit it in certain spots, kind of break it free from the engine block. Alright, I'm going to take a 30-second pause here. I'm going to take off the carburetor. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing something. So whatever carburetor you have, take it off before this. Alright, remove the carburetor. I can't find any bolts, any connectors, anything that holds the intake manifold into place. Just these two post bolts that are sticking up out of the exhaust manifold that we took those nuts off of. Nothing's holding it into place. I can't get it to come loose. Like, I can hear it moving, but I just can't get it to separate. My guess is that there's a gasket between the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold that has since fused, rusted, whatever that may be. So it's just not letting loose. So the big problem here is that your intake manifold is aluminum. It's cast aluminum, so it's, you know, fairly durable, but it's also susceptible to high impact. So I tried a rubber mallet, wasn't coming off, so I'm just going to try and take the whole intake and exhaust manifold off and see how that goes. Maybe I can break them apart at that point. but your exhaust manifold consists of 4 bolts, very similar to the connecting bolts for the intake and the exhaust, and they go very front edge, very back, and then there's 2 that hold it right above the, I think this is an exhaust sensor, right in the middle of the engine block. These are also 9/16. I'm going to take these out, and then I'm going to try and move on to these screws. I guess they're bolts maybe, but these are 1/4 inch Allen wrench heads. So I'm going to take a TV timeout. I'm going to do my best to remove these. Okay, so before I go any further, took off the front bolt. This has a different cupped washer than the 8 that were connecting the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold. So take note of that. Also, the bolt is shorter in length. Back one, I don't know if this is factory or not, but it's actually a bolt that is threaded into the engine block. There's a metal spacer washer and then a nut that holds that onto the back, and that's the very back one. The 2 that connect the exhaust manifold main intake, this one is a bolt with a very long, thick spacer washer on it. And then the other one is very much like the front bolt, so it's built like that. Now the reason I wanted to show you this is because as soon as I loosen these 2 up, this whole thing is going to come right off. So I'm a little bit concerned about, there we go. I guess getting this thing to release from the engine block has gotten it to where it looks like, Alright, I'm going to undo this bolt, last bolt, which I think is the last one holding it into place. I don't know what these are for. These are obviously not connecting it to the engine block. I don't know, maybe this is part of like an air tube. I bet this is probably, there's a California emissions setup for these inline 6, and there's an air tube that connects all 6 of the cylinders and the exhaust, and I bet that's what these are. These are the plugs for that. So if this was a California emissions engine, then there would be an air tube that connects all these that goes down to the exhaust, I think, or somewhere in the emission system. Okay, so this is fine. I'm guessing that, oh, all right, now that I can see it, there is a metal peg. I think it's in the bottom. No, it actually sticks out of the engine block. That the bottom part here and here, so they're like guide pins for the intake manifold. And that's why I can't pull it out, because they're sticking out and then these posts are sticking up. So I guess we have to take this part as one big piece. Let's see if I can keep from destroying myself here. All right. Okay. Please don't fall apart. Please don't fall apart. Okay. Whew. Not that heavy, just kind of awkward, and I don't want to break it. There you go. So these are the 2 posts that I was talking about that are like the guideposts for the intake manifold. That's why I couldn't get it off. Huh. There you go. Different than the 84 Jeep. So here's our dilapidated, obviously worn out exhaust and intake manifold. Peel this off, start over. here's the intake manifold. This should clean up pretty nicely. Well, no, obviously this is not, okay. Picking this thing up, this is not cast aluminum. This is cast iron. Boy, this thing is heavy. If this is cast aluminum, it wouldn't weigh this much. But it's really kind of cool with all the serial numbers and everything on it. I have to, it looks like 5/23/79. Huh. Okay, well, at least you know the born on date. Anyways, there's your exhaust and intake manifold removal. This exhaust manifold I know is toast. Just because looking at the bottom of it, it's all cracked. I have absolutely no idea how that happened. That's kind of a little unsettling. So I'm going to have to get a new exhaust manifold. It's kind of cool. I have absolutely no idea what this does. Looks like it's got like a choke flap on the inside of it. I don't know what that's connected to. I have to learn a little bit about this. All right, one more piece removed. Actually, two more pieces removed. Moving on to the next stuff. I don't know. Have to see if we're going to do anything more on this engine. It is kind of cool. You can see here the original AMC blue. I'm going to have to find this engine color because I'm going to sand this whole thing down. We're going to completely take it apart. Doesn't need to be rebuilt, but I'm definitely going to get this thing back to showroom condition. So really excited to see that happen. Anyways, next episode.